topical issue. Oh, sorry, I wanted to talk today about another topical issue. So this one is about the idea of transgender. Now, obviously, this is something people have different opinions about. So I wanted to give my opinion, and so I'll just get into that now. So the first thing is that I wanted to base this on facts. I don't want this to be all opinion. So the first thing to note is that biologically, there are people can be born either male, that's male number one, female number two, both, or neither. So they're the four options. So people talking about 1,000 genders, which I've heard, is inaccurate, I think is a good way to say it, or they're being a bit I don't know how to put that, but it's not necessarily dishonest so much as it's misleading and just a bit silly, really. Now, as most people know, almost everybody in the world is either male or female. Now, it is possible, and I know some people don't like to believe that there's a third gender, but there actually is. It's a very small number. The figures depends on who you ask, really, as far as how often it is. It's very, very, very small. So people born with both genders is, for example, they have a full penis and some hint of a vagina, and that's it depends on what I've read, anywhere from 1 in 20,000 up to 1 in a million, and that's sort of it's around about. It's extraordinarily unlikely to have even a hint of both genitalia. Is very, very, very unlikely. Most people in the world, not only will most people not have that, they will never meet anybody who's in that situation. I've never met anyone in that situation. I'm sure most of the people watching this will have never met anybody in that situation. Now, it's also possible to be born with no gender, to be born with no penis, no vagina, no nothing. Now, again, I think the figures are similar. They're probably a little bit more common than people born with both, but you're talking 1 in 100,000 people, something extraordinarily unlikely like that. And in those situations, you have to be given a gender. And so those situations with people that are born either with both, with neither, that's what transgender is about as far as a biological situation. So for us to deny it and to say that it's not a real thing, it is a real thing. It's an unusual thing, very, very, very unusual. And you could argue that it's so unusual that we shouldn't be giving it any real attention. And it's a fair argument. I mean, why do you want to give 99% of the attention to something that's 1 in a million or 1 in 100,000? It's a really disproportionate situation that we're in. And it's also like, what I'm saying, so we'll talk about the dual gender, so what people would call a hermaphrodite. So that's where you might have a full penis and a hint of a vagina, or a full vagina and a hint of a penis. Now, I've said, so that's that number. I don't know the exact number, but it's a very unlikely thing. It's even more unlikely to have fully functional penis and a fully functional vagina at once. From my understanding of it, if that's the case, you'll never be able to have children, and you'll never be able to produce children. So, and that's, I mean, I've heard numbers as high as 1 in 100 million that are in that situation. It's ridiculously unusual. So we should be, if we were looking at trans people based on biological situations, we should be looking at no more than 100 worldwide. And so I think we have to assume, and I think it's a fair assumption, that most of the people that are calling themselves trans are not in that situation. And what they're doing is, a lot of people call it identity politics or gender politics. They're people that feel that they're in another gender or whatever, and it's very different. So if you're born, you're male, you're female. It's not a choice. You're born that way. And if you happen to be born with no genders, that's not a choice either. Nor is it a choice to be born with both genders. If you're one of those really unusual people in that situation, And there's people that are born in that situation. There's absolutely nothing wrong. I don't view them any differently to anyone that's born in any other situation, and that's legitimate transgender in that situation. I don't think it's a third gender. I don't think that is a real thing, but it's a both gender. So 4 options again: male, female, both, neither. That's it. So if we want to categorise things, and they're the 4 things that we can theoretically do. We can't add a 5th option. We can't pretend in the existence of a third gender. And some of the arguments for it are really, really, really stupid, and some of them are just laughable. They're comical, and it's really, if you were born with both genders, it would be a serious situation. If you're in a situation where you can't have children, you can't produce children because you have genitalia of both sexes, I'm sure most people in that situation would want to have one part cut off, one part cut out, so that they could be functioning in one gender or the other. Now, we talk about, there's a concept called assigned, a particular gender at birth. Now, for all those people that are born male, that's not an issue. It doesn't even come up. I'm not assigned male at birth. I am male. I was born male. I wasn't born both. So only the assigned gender at birth is only for people that were born with both or born with neither. In those situations, what a doctor will do, and we're talking about 1 in a million case, or very extraordinarily unlikely anyway. And in that situation, the doctor, usually with the parents, will have a talk to them, and they'll go over the how much male they are, how much female they are, and work out what is the right thing for the child. Now, doctors are pretty knowledgeable people. They're some of the smartest people in the world. They're some of the most highly trained people in the world. And they're some of the most trustworthy people in the world. So the suggestion that they would get it wrong, certainly in my country, in Australia, it would be really unlikely for them to get it wrong. Doctors do make mistakes, yes, but it's not common. It's not normal for them to make that sort of mistake. And look, there are some ideas about this that they say, some people believe that you shouldn't be cutting out that secondary sex. So they shouldn't be cutting out the genitalia. And there is that argument, certainly in some countries, and I'm aware in some cases in India, and hello to anyone from India watching this or listening to this. But there are some cases in India that they have not cut out the being both genders or being neither gender. They've left it there for life. And such people in that situation cannot have children, and they cannot produce children, they cannot carry children, and they live relatively short lives. They're prone to dying at a very young age, perhaps 15 or 16 years old. And it's, well, per Hindu beliefs, it could well be a very good life. But it's not a situation that somebody in Australia, for example, could really live that situation, because they're not going to get the worship of being a Hindu god or goddess or anything like that to put up with the difficulties they're going to have from having both genders or from having neither gender. So that's what assigned the sex at birth is about. It's not about people like me. I was born male because I am male. It's not about 99.9999% or however many it is of people that are either born male or born female. I didn't have part of a vagina in my body, so there's no assigned aspect of it. Only people who have a bit of penis and a bit of vagina or some internal part associated with the gender, they're the only people that can claim legitimately that they were assigned a particular sex at birth. So this transgender movement is talking about something that's a tiny chance, and they're making a pretense that it's a big chance. Again, I mean, if you're looking at a 1 in a million person, or even 1 in 20,000, we're not talking about a majority. So if you're that 1 in 20,000 or 1 in a million or whatever the proportion is, depending on who you ask and what figures they're using, but if you're that person and you have been assigned male when you had female, when you had a vagina or part of a vagina, and you were told, or you were cut out without your knowledge or permission when you were an infant, then you are assigned at birth. Everybody else is not. So anybody else, perhaps they're lying, perhaps they're misinformed, perhaps they're uh, believing that it's true, but it's not true. So that's one aspect that we've got to say. First off, there's a lot of dishonesty about that. Now, next thing I want to say, so, I've said my belief about homosexuality, and it's a similar idea about transgender. So if you're somebody that has chosen to live as a woman when you're born a man, it doesn't affect me. So I don't have a view on that as far as male, good or bad. It's your choice. It's not affecting me. Now, so long as it remains not affecting me, and I don't care. I don't care either way. So if you say hello to me and you're a, a male and you're dressed in women's clothing, I'll say hello back. It's not affecting me. And vice versa, if you're a woman and you're dressed in men's clothing, I'll say hello. Here you go. Now, the next thing to say is that, so there is a thing that they call a sex change operation. Now, there's different versions of this. So sex change operation does not actually change your sex. So if you're born male and you have a sex change operation, you'll appear to be female. So they might castrate you, take away your penis, your balls, and everything like that. So, but there's different versions of it. So some of them, you just get implants of breasts. Some of them, it's effectively just wearing women's clothing. So it depends on what operation and what level. And there's lots of different levels. It can take years to finish the thing. But in that situation, you're not actually female. And we know that you're not female. And you've never been able to be female. If you have your male to female sex operation, you will never be able to carry a child. And you will never have a menstruation. You're not female. And you might have a pretense of being female. You might be able to trick people into thinking you're female, but you're not actually female. And I mean, we've had castration for thousands of years, and nobody ever thought that they were female because they were castrated. They were just, perhaps they consider themselves less of a man, but they're still a man. And you can't change your sex. Some people wish they could, but you can't. So the only way that is if you are someone with both genitals and you get one cut out, then you can actually become either one of the genders. I'm not sure of the science of it. I think you have to do it fairly young for it to work. But all these people that say, well, I'm male, I'm going to become female, I don't want to say they're lying, but it's sort of, they're kidding themselves. You take away a sex, all you're doing is you're cutting out your sex. You're not creating a new sex. And it's the same the other way. When you're female and you decide that you want to live as a man, if you cut out your vagina or grow a penis on top of it, or whatever the situation is, it's possible that you will no longer be able to get pregnant, but you will never be in a situation where you can produce sperm or create a baby that way. So in that sense, you're never going to be able to change sexes. I don't think, and I'm not completely up to date with the science on this, but I don't believe it's possible. I know that in some animals they have been known to change sexes. So there's frogs, there's I think octopuses, and there's, I believe, some types of worms and lizards can change sexes. So there might be a situation in the future where we are able to somehow use that technology to actually allow someone to change sex. And if that ever happens, we'll be looking at this in a whole different way. Because in that situation, people born male could become female, and people who are born female could become male. That's not the case at the moment. So I'm dealing with what's at the moment. If that changes in the future, it changes in the future. And then we'll be saying, well, you've changed from male to female. We've changed from female to male. And then they'll be more honest in a lot of ways. They'll be saying, I'm female or I'm male, and they will be male or they will be female. So that's that side of things. So it's Yeah, so we're dealing with a very small proportion of people and something that doesn't do what they say it does. And also, we're sort of, when we're saying assigned at birth and such, in most cases we're lying about that. You're not in a assigned at birth situation. You're you're male or you're female, and that's it. You're not a both. You're not a neither, and you never were. Um, and when you're in the middle of a sex change operation, you're not a both either. You're not a both. You don't you don't become a female. You just become less of a male or less of a female, and that's what the operation does. Now, look, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the idea that this gender dysphoria thing that we've talked about. So this is where people believe that they are a different gender to what they actually are. Now, this has long been considered to be a psychiatric illness, and it's still considered to be a psychiatric illness. The belief that you're someone that you're not is, I believe it fits in the general spectrum of schizophrenia, in the current definition of schizophrenia, I mean. Now, if you're someone that believes that you're Jesus, that you're God, that you're Muhammad, that you're Napoleon, any of those sorts of things, we'd be all looking at you and saying, look, we want you to get help. We don't want you to feel that way. That's unhealthy. But some are more unhealthy than others. If you believe that you're a fairy, you're probably not hurting anyone. If you believe that you're someone powerful, God, Jesus, Muhammad, any really powerful people, and then you go around hurting people or even killing them, then we get really worried. So if we consider the idea that you think that you're a different gender to what you are, as in that realm, then I think at best we can consider them to be a harmless imagination, if you like. So it might not be harmful. It might not be harmful to anyone for you to think that you're the opposite sex. And now, why do we believe that way? Why is a man thinking that he's a woman? Now, the first thing to consider is that it's actually reasonably normal to have a degree of that. I don't know what everybody's early childhood was like. I know for myself, when I was about 5 or 6 years old, had girls, and they would say, "Show me yours, I'll show you mine." That's normal. It's very, very normal for that age. And that's what you do. And you go, "Wow, I didn't know you were different to me down there." And not every kid has that experience, but if you do, it's not a weird experience. It's just, wow, that's exciting. That's interesting. Now, just imagine that you're a 5 or 6 year old, and I remember a little bit about what I was like when I was 5 or 6, and there were circumstances where you'd say, "Well, I wonder what it'd be like to be a girl." And I was a boy. I was wondering what it'd be like to be a girl, particularly after the show you yours or show you mine situation. And there were girls that were going, "I wonder what it'd be like to be a boy." That's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of understanding the opposite sex so that you can know your place in the world. That's not seriously thinking that I want to be a woman. And at 6 years old, honestly, how can you even have any concept of really what that means? I didn't know what it was like to be a man until perhaps I was 20. It's not something that you understand when you're 6. So off the bat there, I think I can say really, really conclusively that any attempts at a sex change at least before you're 18, are probably a bad idea. And I'd really discourage laws that would allow puberty blockers or any kind of sex change operation before you're 18. If you want to make a life-changing one-way decision such as that, which is a significant decision to make, I think you should do it with an adult brain and an adult level of experience. I think 2021 is probably more realistic than 18, but certainly I don't want people to be doing that at 12, because I think if we're the youngest we did it, say if we did it at 6, we allowed people to sex change at 6, I think we'd find that a lot of people would do it that wouldn't be doing it at 18. And you might be finding 1 in 4 people would do it at 6, but yet maybe 1 in 100 people would do it at 18. And probably less if they understood that it wasn't actually changing their sex. And it's that's I mean, just imagine that you'd had the sex change operation and you had it at 6, and you get to be 18, 20, 25, whatever age when you realise what it really means. And let's assume that you're one of the majority of people who would say, well, that's not what I thought it was going to be. Well, you can't get that gender back. So you've had the bits cut out, you've had whatever changes made, and you can't get it back. So that's a real significant issue. I don't think we've had thorough studies on that, but certainly had a lot of people that regretted getting a sex change operation. And the younger they got it, the more likely they are to regret it. So another thing, so I wanted to talk about this a bit more. So uh, some people may know that most women get a thing called penis envy. Now, this is not to say that they're jealous of men so much that it's usually to do with being able to urinate standing up, which is a big bone of contention for women. Not every woman has it, but it's very common and it's very normal. They've even got a sort of device you can get in Japan where you can attach it to your vagina and then you can pee standing up. Now, that's because penis envy is very common. Okay, peeing standing up is convenient. I think every man will agree with that, and I'll agree with that. It's convenient. I'd hate the idea that I have to sit down every time. And of course, if you're out camping out the bush or anything like that, it's very convenient. Um, you know, as long as you don't have to worry about people telling you off for it, it's very convenient. And that's penis envy. So there are other elements of it, but that's the main part of penis envy. Now, men often have a reciprocal envy towards women, and that's the main part of that is womb envy. So nobody wants to have menstrual periods. No man wants that. Well, perhaps there's somebody, but that's not the normal type of the envy. The envy is that a lot of men want to be able to have children, to become pregnant, and a lot of it is to do with the control element of it. That let's say you want to have children, the woman doesn't want to, or they can't find a woman, and they can maybe find a woman that can agree to sex once, but they can't agree to carry a child with them, and so that's the womb envy. And I mean, there's other things you have, breast envy, and all sorts of other things, but they're the main ones. So there's a lot of men out there that if they could become pregnant would. There's a lot of women out there that if they could have a penis and be able to pee standing up, they would. Is that transgender? And the simple answer is no. Look, we can all be very equal and we can ban menstrual periods. I think nobody likes them. We can allow both genders to get pregnant, and both genders can have penises so they can pee standing up. That'd be nice, wouldn't that be lovely? And both genders can have wonderful breasts. That'd be nice. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? And I've imagined, and I think in the future this will probably happen, that they'll have a sort of a robot that you can control that can look exactly what you want them to look like and go around, having a perfect body, perfect voice, perfect hair, perfect everything, and be, if you want them to be, the other sex. And I think that could become popular. That's not transgender. That's normal. And I mean, going back, if we actually had functioning sex change operations, I think it would be much more common for people to get the sex change operation compared to right now when they're not functioning. And particularly if it was a cheap, it was affordable, and it was two-way. Let's say. So I said to you, no matter if you're a woman or a man reading this, or listening to this, or watching this, and I said to you, hey, for the price of your lunch for today, at a McDonald's lunch, so in Australia that's like $10. So for the price of that, you can instantly, painlessly change your sex completely, such that you can produce sperm or get pregnant, and then you can reverse it a day later. How many people do that? I mean, with the option to reverse it, not forcing you to. I think most of the world would do that, as at least to see what it's like. And I think we'd be looking at 90%, maybe we're looking at 80%. So most of the world, and I think we can say this very clearly, most of the world is curious about the opposite sex. They'd be interested in seeing what it's like. Now, that's not transgender. Transgender is this 1 in a million person who's born with both sexes, or born with neither sex. That's transgender. This idea that you are curious about the opposite sex is everyone, or almost everyone. So some people are just not curious. There are a few people that are just not curious. And I'd almost consider those people weird. But why are you not curious about the opposite sex? Why are you so stuck in your ways? But there are people that are not curious. So this is the problem with the transgender politics, if you like. It's that they confuse what's everyone with almost everyone. They confuse almost everyone with almost no one. Almost everyone, 6 years old, 5 years old, is curious about what it'd be like, about what it is like. Almost everyone, even as adults, would consider a temporary, two-way, fully functional sex change. Almost everyone would not want it. And it doesn't make you gay, it doesn't make you transgender, it just makes you curious. And we're confusing those two issues. And so, and I've talked about, so I don't care if people make decisions that don't affect me. So if somebody decides to go around wearing a dress, wearing high heels as a man, wearing full makeup, it doesn't affect me. I might think it looks a bit silly, but I think in most cases it does look a bit silly. But that's their decision. I mean, they'll probably tell me, oh, you should be wearing a purple t-shirt. You know, it's that level. But the issue comes when they say, oh, this concept of transphobic, this concept of they need protection. If you're one of those people that are born with both genders, that's fair enough conversation. If you're someone that has chosen to have a sex change operation, I would argue that's not the same thing. So you've chosen to have an operation, and now you're claiming discrimination. I mean, there are operations people could get. I could get an operation to make my face less fat. I could get an operation to, make myself look nicer. And people do. People get breast enlargement. People get fine tuning on their nose, their face, the whole body. And do they then go around saying, hey, I need anti-discrimination laws for me? No, they don't. And it'd be stupid if they did. I mean, just imagine, Pamela Anderson going around saying, oh, how dare you discriminate against me because of my breast size? It's like, well, you went to a surgeon for those breasts. So, I mean, if we like them, good. If we don't like them, good. We're allowed to not like them. And if you walk around you're wearing women's clothing whilst you've got a full beard, if we find that we don't think that's attractive, we're allowed to say that. We should be allowed to say that. And it's not the same thing. So if you're talking about wearing a shirt, if somebody goes around and tells me off that I'm wearing a shirt, I'm not going to like that. That's not discrimination. It's not nice, but it's not discrimination. Not the same issue. And I think that we are pandering to what generally is a very small proportion. I mean, if we're going to get ridiculous with this, there was a man in the newspaper who was 61, I think, and he said he wanted to say, well, I feel like I'm 35. I want to change my age to 35. That's stupid. That's ridiculous. People that say, well, I feel like a dolphin. I feel like a tree. And if you want to feel that way, play a computer game, read a book, have a nice dream, and you'll feel that way. You don't have to change your waking life without a fantasy. Fantasy is fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And the issue is not that you feel that way. You can feel however you like. The issue is that you're forcing me, to change my way of doing things to accommodate your own thing. I don't go around telling people I'm wearing a purple shirt. You all have to wear purple shirts. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go around saying, hey, I'm wearing a purple shirt. None of you are allowed to criticise me for my purple shirt. Particularly if I've got food stain on it or something stupid. I'm not going to like you criticising me, but it's not the same. And I think that's where we are at. And I think that it's rather ridiculous. Certainly, as I said, the most important thing. So we need to put a complete ban. And certainly, I really insist on this in our country, that we should not even be discussing transgender issues with anyone under an adult age. So anyone under 18, it should not be taught in schools. It should not be discussed. No child should ever be allowed to do that. And I think certainly until they finish puberty, which is generally about 18, in some cases 20, 25, 30. Some people finish puberty when they're 14 or 16. But we need to set some kind of sensible age. I think 18 is a sensible age. And so if we have that and we say, under no circumstances can anyone ever be considered for a permanent, irreversible removal of gender, because it's not really sex change. It's removing your gender, or removing part of the gender. So I think we need to say 18. That's the age. We don't even get into discussions beyond that. I don't think it ruins childhoods by living out what your birth gender is. And the second thing is, I think that every case where, and it's going to not be very many cases, but I think every case where someone has been born with both genders, that should be a part of their permanent medical record. I don't know if it is. I don't. Actually, I think it is. I think it already is. But that needs to be clear so that anybody who's going there saying, oh, well, I've always felt like a man when I'm a woman, or always felt like a woman when they're a man, if they have that support, that should make getting a sex change more likely, because I think that's a legitimate reason for getting a sex change. And if you're not in that situation, look, it's still your choice. If you want to remove your own gender, that's your choice. And I think that's a right. Well, right is probably a strong word, but it's certainly something that's reasonable. It's like, I think I've got the right to cut off my own finger if I want to. It's probably a stupid thing to do, but I've still got the right to do that. And if somebody else, if I cut off my own finger, I'd expect people to go around and say, geez, what an idiot for cutting off their own finger. But it's still my choice to do that. That's not going to grow back. It's a permanent loss of a limb. And that's, I think we can put a reasonable approximation and say, removing your gender, which is what a sex change operation is the equivalent of cutting off your own finger. And I think it's been, particularly in the last few years, 5 years, maybe 10 years, it's become rather stupid. So, if anyone's watching this and you have had a sex change operation, I don't hate you. I don't have an opinion of you. It's your choice. You've got it happen. Well, good on for you. I'm not going to treat you differently because of your choice in that aspect, any more than I'd expect to be treated differently for wearing this purple shirt or for any other choices I've made. Well, it's your choice. It's how you are. If you treat me well otherwise, that's good. But at the same time, look, if you want me to call you him or her, I'll do that if that's your preference. It doesn't matter to me. It's no more different if you want to be called Matthew or Sean when that's not your name. Why do I care? But please don't be really stupid about it. If I say, hello, sir, and you identify as a woman, you can get stuffed. I'm not trying to offend you, but seriously, get stuffed with that. That's just not fair. And, assuming your gender, that's not fair. And I have online people assume that I'm a woman for some reason. I have that happen all the time. I get assumed all sorts of things about myself that are not true. Do I go around going, oh, you should? Well, sometimes I do actually, but I'm just playing games when I do that. I mean, if you think that I sound like a woman, or look like a woman, or have a name like a woman, it's your business. It's not offensive. It's just, well, you're either an idiot or I'm just not displaying my myself very well. Something's going on there. So yeah, I do seriously take objection to that. There are people that look, I can't be sure when I look at them if they're male or female. It's always been the case. It's not a new thing. It doesn't make you transgender. It doesn't make you gay. Could be, well, could be my fault. Looking at you, it's so yeah. That's the whole thing on that. So yeah, the most important things, two things. Number one, you cannot allow anyone under 18 to ever get a sex change operation under any circumstances. I don't care. And I mean, unless it's harmful to their health or something, I think it's ridiculous. And I think the claim, oh, well, they would commit suicide otherwise. I don't think that sort of threat's realistic. And so the second thing is that I think we should be able to have people that have a sex change, that they want to consider themselves transgender. But I don't think that we should be in trouble for calling them male when they claim to be female. I don't think that that's fair. There was a third thing I've forgotten. I think that's all, isn't it? There's a third thing. Maybe I'll leave it for another video. But I've got a feeling there was a third thing that I was going to say. Yeah, so yeah, and the claim that transgender makes you is related to homosexuality is silly. I mean, maybe more likely to have a sex change if you're gay. Maybe if you have had a sex change, you're more likely to be gay. But they're not necessarily the same thing. So, that's just what I wanted to say about that. Again, I mean, I have met a few people that were transgender that have had sex change operations, and at least one of them got on very well with him. He was my babysitter when I was little. He's now living as a woman, and as far as I know, I don't have anything negative to say about him. He was a wonderful man. I don't know what he's like since the operation. Never met him since then. But it's not a good or evil thing. It's a choice thing. It's a purple shirt thing. It's not something where I think we should be going around saying you're a bad person for getting a sex change operation, nor should we be saying that you're a good person. You've just got a sex change operation. It's, you've decided to do it. Whether it was sensible or stupid, that's still your decision. So that's something that we need to really be careful about. And yeah, so I think I pretty much said everything I need to say there. So I think I'll just close this now. So hopefully this has worked out okay.